All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel um, targeted toward learning about the uh, greatest theories of everything, mostly. And today is video number 224 on the reciprocal system of theory. And that is a theory that was first derived by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century. He died back in 1990, and we've gone over a few of his books, Beyond Space and Time, and also Nothing But Motion. We've looked at a few of his articles and some other things. Right now, today is the fourth video that we've done on an article that's called Reciprocal Astronomy. And this is actually an article that I wrote, which is kind of a summary of some of the highlights of his book, Universe of Motion, which is his book on astronomy. And that's a long and difficult book that we might touch on as we move forward, but I just wanted to kind of get this summary in because this article is only probably take 3 more videos, and just kind of hits the high points, just gives you the general idea. And I think kind of the most important thing is it just helps you to be able to think along the same lines as Larson in the reciprocal system. So you might want to go back and watch those first 3 videos. We're going to go right into it from here. I believe he's starting to talk about pulsars, or we're starting to talk about pulsars here. Just before that, we were talking about white dwarf stars, and they're both the result of explosions, very large stellar explosions. And once the explosion goes beyond the speed of light, then the rules change. And so that's kind of the fundamental nature of Larson's reciprocal system, which you would get a more background in if you watch those first 3 videos or any of the other videos that are here on the reciprocal system. Okay, starting up. The environment of the explosion determines which of the 2 options manifests. If the explosion is near the center of the galaxy, it becomes the jet. If it is away from the center, the result is normally the pulsar. In general, the pulsar occurs in the spiral arms of the galaxies, and the jet originates in the central core of the galaxies. Galaxies are flat, like a pancake. The biggest ones have a bulge in the center, like a fried egg, formed on the surface of a gigantic sphere, which appears flat like an endless frying pan. So the giant galaxy is like your brain on drugs, right? Larson has identified his pulsar with the establishment astronomers' theoretical black hole. A third result occurs when the Type 2 explosion takes place in a star that is already a member of a binary star system. According to one of Larson's associates, Dr. Bruce Perrett, the exploding half is typically the red giant, and the explosion is powerful enough to affect its white dwarf partner already beyond the speed of light. As a result, the dwarf is accelerated beyond twice the speed of light and becomes a pulsar. At the same time, the explosion blows it apart into several mini pulsars and a ring structure that becomes 4 inner planets, an asteroid belt, and 4 outer planets. Motion beyond twice the speed of light is anti-gravity motion, like the progression of the natural reference system. So instead of falling into the sun due to gravitational attraction, the planet strikes a balance between gravity and anti-gravity motion, and the planet settles into an orbit. The inner core of the former red giant is blown out of the material sector entirely and becomes the second focus in the planet's elliptical orbits. All of these planets start out as mini pulsars, but over time they build up stray matter over their surface. The inner planets build up much more than the outer planets, and eventually they cool and develop an atmosphere. First, planet number 4, Mars, then number 3, Earth, then number 2, Venus, then number 4 again, Mars. Motion of the pulsars is quantized, so the distances of each planet from the Sun follow a fairly simple linear relationship. Larson was able to modify the establishment's well-known Bode's law to determine accurately the distance from each planet to the Sun. Perret also extended Larson's theory into planetary geophysics. Perret deduced that the Earth has an inner core pulsar with white dwarf material over that, the outer core, with low speed matter over that, the mantle, with a thin asthenosphere of liquid magma and a dry crust over that. He argues, counter to the establishment, that the Earth was covered by land before it was covered by water. Every 5,000 years or so, the inner core undergoes a quantum expansion, which causes the outer crust to split apart. Meanwhile, some plant bacteria develop on the land, which creates water as a waste product. Water comes from life, and the more life, the deeper the water. Gradually, with every quantum expansion of the Earth, the original land mass that covered the planet, Pangaea, broke up into continents: Mu, Eurasia, Africa, Lemuria, and Atlantis, or Antarctica. Continents are not drifting. They are moving away from each other in a scalar fashion with each expansion of the inner core. Each time this happens, it has a devastating effect on human life of this planet. With continued life, Perret predicts, the Earth will become one giant water world interspersed with an abundance of small islands. Of their deviations, as they traverse the depths of the Earth's interior. I think I'm missing something there. Sorry. Okay, this is called planetary history. Perret also used the reciprocal system to detect an exponential error in the system of geological radioactive carbon dating. Perret says that a geological date of 65 million years is actually more like 65,000 years. This allows him to correlate the ancient Indian, Mayan, Norse, and biblical tales of global cataclysm to the actual geological layers of the Cretaceous, Paleocene, Eocene, and Oligocene eras. Ancient records, geologic period. So 75,000 years ago, that equals the 100 million of the Cretaceous period. Breakup of Mu, 50,000 years ago, that correlates with the 65 million years of the Paleocene. Second breakup of Mu. First breakup of Atlantis, 24,000 years ago, which correlates with the 45 million year ago Eocene era. Second breakup of Atlantis, 16,000 years ago, correlating with the 12 million Oligocene era. Lemuria disappears 9,600 years ago. Modern final sinking of Atlantis he has at 3114 BC. And then the modern start of the Mayan calendar. Perret speculates that less than 100,000 years ago, humans roamed the earth with dinosaurs, and he points to a number of ancient cave drawings and fossils that depict humans hunting them. So the Brontosaurus burger barbecues over at Betty and Barney Rubble's was no joke. Perret also uses the faster than light speed of the reciprocal system to explain volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, and tornadoes. Finally, Perret predicts that the planet is due for another expansion, which should entail an inversion of the magnetic field, including a shift of the poles and all of their ice to near the equator. These apocalypses are scheduled for around 2012, according to the Mayan calendar. Just keep in mind, I wrote this back in 2010. And Perret admonishes us to brush up on our swimming, if possible, to start preparing for all of these events. Okay, part 4. As you can see, Dr. Perret is quite a bit more speculative than Mr. Larson. In some cases, that can be a good thing, just as food for thought and just learning to apply the reciprocal system in creative and expansive ways. That's really the best way to learn the system, is by attempting to apply it. Okay, part 4, galactic formation and explosions. Another one of Larson's associates, Dr. KVK Nehru, has used the reciprocal system to understand the large-scale structure of the universe, including clusters of galaxies and galactic bubbles. Globular clusters, the biggest, oldest galaxies, are at the equator, disk, or surface of a gigantic sphere or bubble. The smaller bubble on a larger one. The globular clusters are separate off the equator or disk sphere surface of the larger bubble and free falling into it. The globular clusters are within the gravitational limits of the biggest galaxies in the whole cluster. They are also within the gravitational limits of each other. But the stars and protostars within each globular cluster are outside of each other's gravitational limit. On the surface of the larger bubble at the equator of the smaller. When there is a powerful type 2 explosion, the matter normally leaves the material sector for the cosmic sector and leaves an expanding bubble in its wake at the end of the jet. This bubble is expanding at the speed of light and is completely empty at the moment of explosion. Very slowly, new matter fills the bubble from the cosmic sector, distributed equally over all locations, as it is non-local, and its gravity slows the expansion. When the bubble radius has gotten to a critical point, globular clusters are formed at the periphery, which condense in spherical shells toward the expanding bubble. It takes about 500 million years for a globular cluster to form, and as they inevitably combine, galaxies form near the surface of the bubble. When two globular clusters combine, the result is a small, irregular galaxy. The establishment astronomers think that colliding globular clusters and galaxies can pass right through each other. But Larson compares it to combining fluids. Even though the stars are light years apart, the collision is inelastic. They encounter a wall, not a passageway. As these irregular galaxies combine, they form larger and larger galaxies, eventually elliptical and spiral galaxies. As there are more collisions with globular clusters, the galaxies get bigger and bigger, and the collision with each new globular cluster becomes an increasingly minor event. The galaxy maintains its structure rather than becoming irregular. Inelastic collisions between galaxy and globular cluster becomes increasingly minor. The structure over time evolves from irregular to elliptical to spiral to giant spheroidal. Galaxies are always existing in both material and cosmic sectors. The Milky Way galaxy's gravitational limit is about 2 million light years. But the Milky Way is not at the center of our galactic cluster. There is a larger galaxy, perhaps Andromeda, at the equator of the galactic cluster, on the surface of the giant bubble. This central galaxy will eventually swallow up the Milky Way and all of the galaxies in the cluster. Okay, let's see here. Having trouble seeing the time here. Okay, I've got about 5 more minutes here. Okay, quasar formation. As stars and galaxies get older, type 2 supernovae occur in the galactic cores, which set off chain reactions of type 2 explosions in each star, leading to jets. Nehru explains how these jets and the magnetic fields that coexist with them form sunspots. Meanwhile, the globular cluster stars are moving toward the central galaxy, and they confine the jets in the manner of the surface of a balloon. This containment causes a great deal of pressure to build up in the core of the galaxy until the pressure becomes too great and a critical number of jets simultaneously blow a hole in the fabric of the galaxy. This is known as a quasar, a galactic fragment accelerating into the cosmic sector. A quasar is the galactic equivalent of a jet, a moving white dwarf, but in a quasar, the white dwarf is an entire chunk of the core of a galaxy, while a giant spheroidal galaxy may have 1 trillion stars. The quasar has a billion or so. Now, I don't know that I've noted this in this article, but Larson actually predicted the existence of quasars a few years before they were actually discovered. He predicted the existence of quasars in, I believe, 1959, and the quasars were discovered in the early 1960s, and he predicted them with considerable detail. I believe like 14 or so main points that were all confirmed by the observations. Quasars versus pulsars. Like normal white dwarfs, the pulsar and the quasar evolve in multiple stages. As pulsars and quasars accelerate due to the type 2 explosions, they begin to overcome the force of gravity of the entire galaxy located at the center. The pulsar, located farther from the galactic core, where gravity is lower, overcomes gravity quickly, maybe 10,000 years, and eventually reaches twice the speed of light where it first pulses then usually leaves the material sector entirely. Some pulsars called X-ray emitters reach the 2-unit limit, but then slow down and come back to the material sector. Quasar evolution. A quasar, meanwhile, having all the gravity of the entire core of the galaxy to overcome as it moves away from the center, accelerates slowly, reaching twice the speed of light only after billions of years of accelerated motion. When it does, it enters the cosmic sector and disappears from the material sector, leaving an empty bubble way out in space. Eventually, too many quasars blow through the surface of the galaxy for the galaxy to repair its structural integrity. In 1959, Larson confessed that the detailed prediction of his quasar theory sounded fantastic and outrageous. A few years later, however, establishment astronomers discovered quasars just the way Larson had predicted, unbeknownst to them, of course. Moreover, while the establishment astronomers have a hodgepodge of different theories to explain white dwarfs, planets, pulsars, X-ray emitters, quasars, gamma-ray bursts, and sunspots, the reciprocal system uses the same theory to explain all of them. They are all compact objects made so by gigantic explosions that take them beyond the speed of light, and in some cases beyond twice the speed of light. Since the establishment are slavish obedience to Einstein's speed of light speed limit, which has no evidential basis in fact, they are not ready even to entertain the possibility that Larson's theory could be correct. Meanwhile, made-up concepts like the black hole and the Big Bang cover our ignorance, and we pay billions of dollars for we pay billions of dollars for giant observatories and particle accelerators. Well, I guess that is the end of the article. I thought it went on a little bit longer. I swear, I wrote this article 13 years ago, but I'm not convinced that this is the final draft of this article. I might look out to see if I can find, but, you know, be that as it may, that's the end of the article, and tomorrow we will start a new section, again, on the reciprocal system, but we're going to get into some articles that were written, or books written by either KVK Nehru or Dr. Bruce Perret. I think we're going to start out with a little bit of Nehru and then go into the Bruce Perret after that, and we'll go from there. So stop now and have a great day. I hope to see you next time.